Hi there. Cold exposure therapy has become popular over the last few years. Ice baths, cold plunges, cold showers, you see them everywhere. Most men don't actually understand why cold exposure actually works, or why it works differently after the age of 40. Some men jump in too hard too often and end up exhausted, sore, or burned out. Others dismiss it complete. So let's get started with today's video. Cold exposure therapy, biohacking age for men over 40. Let's go. Here's our medical disclaimer, and it's just important to note that your medical practitioner should always be consulted before beginning any new program that involves exercise, nutrition, wellness, or health. Hi there, I'm Terry. I'm 64 years old, and I help men age 40 to 70 regain their health and wellness to live a better quality of life. In this video, I'm going to explain what cold exposure actually does at the metabolic level, how it activates brown fat, why it works especially for men over the age of 40 and beyond, and how to use it safely and intelligently without wrecking your recovery. Cold exposure is not about toughness, it's about signaling. There are two primary types of fat in your body. White fat stores energy. This is the fat most men are trying to lose. Brown fat, on the other hand, burns energy to produce heat. Brown fat is metabolically active. It's rich in mitochondria, and its job is to protect you from cold. When brown fat is activated, it consumes calories, not for movement, but for heat production. This is why brown fat is so powerful metabolically. Instead of storing excess energy, it destroys it. So here's what's important for men over the age of 40. As men age, brown fat activity declines. At the same time, insulin resistance increases. That combination makes fat loss much harder than when you were younger. Cold exposure reactivates brown fat and increases the number and activity of mitochondria within it. In other words, it upgrades the tissue responsible for burning energy. When your body is exposed to cold, your nervous system responds immediately. Core temperature drops slightly, and your brain activates survival pathways. One of the first responses is a sharp increase in norepinephrine, mobilizes stored fat, increases alertness and focus, improves your insulin sensitivity. This hormone tells your body energy is needed right now. Fat is released from storage and delivered to mitochondria to be burned. Cold exposure also improves glucose handling. Muscle and fat tissue becomes more insulin sensitive. That's critical after the age of 40, when insulin resistance is often the primary metabolic bottleneck. This is why cold exposure is not just about calories burned during the session, it's about upgrading metabolic responsiveness afterward. So why cold works best fasted? Here's an important distinction. Cold exposure works in both fed and fasted states, but the metabolic outcome is different. When you're fed, insulin is elevated. Incoming fuel is available. When you're fasted, insulin is low. No incoming fuel exists. In a fasted state, cold exposure forces your body to rely on stored energy. Fat mobilization increases. Brown fat activation increases. Metabolic signaling becomes stronger. This is why short, controlled cold exposure works exceptionally well before your first meal of the day. That doesn't mean longer is better. It means timing and dosage matter. Now, when we talk about early in the day, we're talking about, of course, your regular morning shower. Common cold exposure mistakes after the age of 40 that most men make, again, is important to note. This is where men get into trouble. The most common mistakes are going too cold too soon, staying in too long, doing it too frequently, combining cold with heavy training and long fasts. Cold exposure is a stressor, a productive one, but still a stressor. After 40, recovering capacity is finite. If cold exposure worsens your sleep, increases irritability, or leaves you feeling drained, and reduces your training performance, it is overdosed. Cold exposure should leave you feeling energized, clear-headed, calm but alert, but not exhausted. Safe and effective cold protocols for men over 40 look like this. So here's what works for men. Start simple. Cold showers are more than enough in the beginning. Begin with 30 to 60 seconds of cold water at the end of your normal shower. 2 to 5 times per week. Focus on calm breathing. Once tolerance improves, some men may choose to experiment with ice baths. If you do, temperature should be around 50 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Duration is usually 2 to 5 minutes, which are ideal. Frequency should be no more than 2 to 3 times per week. Ice baths, of course, are optional. Cold adaptation does not require suffering. Consistency beats intensity. How cold fits into the metabolic reset. Cold exposure is not a standalone solution. It works best when layered correctly. Fasting lowers insulin and mobilizes fat. Cold exposure activates brown fat and mitochondrial signaling. Strength training preserves muscle and glucose disposal. Each tool that I just mentioned amplifies the others when sequenced intelligently. Cold exposure stimulates mitochondria, but stimulation alone is not enough. In my next video, I'll show you how heat therapy and sauna use repair and reinforce the very systems cold exposure activates, and why this matters for longevity, hormones, and recovery after the age of 40. So please subscribe, like this video, and comment below. I'd appreciate it very much. So I'll see you in my next videos, and have a great day. Bye for now.